Hello, I'm Colin Heaton, former Marine Corps scout sniper, history professor, historian, and author.
Today on History Did That,
we're diving into a topic often overlooked, the story of Irish slavery. There's a long-standing debate about whether the Irish were the first slaves in the Americas, arriving almost a decade before the first black African slaves. Slavery, one of the oldest profit-driven systems in human history, targeted the Irish for centuries. Persecution, enslavement, and indentured servitude haunted them for over 1,000 years. So when did the Irish first become slaves? How long did it last? And who was responsible? Let's explore this often forgotten chapter of history. Some argue that Irish slavery under English and later British rule was simply voluntary indentured servitude, but the reality is far more complex. Many Irish were forcibly taken, political prisoners, vagrants, convicts, activists, thieves, and those deemed undesirable by English authorities. Those who were unwillingly transported were in effect slaves, regardless of the legal terminology of the time. The Irish experience with slavery began long before the English arrived. In 795, the first Viking raids struck Ireland, targeting villages and monasteries for loot, valuables, and captives. These early raids focused on coastal settlements, allowing Vikings to strike quickly and retreat. By 837, the scale of attacks increased, targeting major monastic towns such as Armagh, Glendalough, Kildare, and Clonmacnoise. Many captives were taken to Scotland and Iceland, often to serve as laborers or household slaves. One notable event occurred in 885. Irish slaves in Iceland staged one of Europe's largest slave rebellions since the fall of the Roman Empire. They killed their master, Hjorleif Hromarsson, and fled to Vestmannaeyrs, proving that even in captivity, the Irish resisted oppression whenever they could. By 841, the port that would later become Dublin was under Norse control, and by 853, Dublin had developed into a Norse trading hub. Slavery became central to the economy, and captives were a significant part of this system. Even after the Vikings' demise, raids continued sporadically, but Irish resistance grew stronger. In 980, King Mael Secnall MacDonald led Irish forces to defeat the Vikings and liberate their slaves. The final blow to Viking control in Ireland came in 1014 at the Battle of Clontarf, where High King Byron Boru defeated the Viking forces, allied with some local Irish factions. This victory ended the era of constant Norse raids and temporarily restored freedom for many who had been enslaved.
slavery itself declined in Ireland after the Norman invasion of England in 1066, and true slavery in Ireland was formally abolished by 1102. However, serfdom persisted for centuries. Unlike slaves, serfs were bound to the land rather than being sold to other regions. While this kept agriculture functioning, it didn't end exploitation. Irish peasants were still tied to their lord's will, powerless and subject to harsh treatment. Fast forward to the 17th century, the Battle of Kinsale in 1601 marked a turning point for Ireland. The Irish aristocracy fled, leaving commoners under strict English control. In 1603-1604, King James I issued the Order of Banishment, allowing captured Irish soldiers to be permanently sold to the New World. Effectively, these were slaves. By 1612, the first recorded Irish slaves arrived in Brazil, transported to the Amazon basin, a direct introduction of Irish people to the Americas as forced laborers.
There's ongoing debate about whether these individuals were indentured servants or outright slaves. Yet, given that they were forcibly removed from their homeland without consent, the evidence leans heavily towards slavery. Later, King Charles I reportedly continued this practice, authorizing the sale of Irish captives, including prisoners and those deemed undesirable, to English plantation owners in North America and the Caribbean. During this period, tens of thousands of Irish men, women, and children were sent to colonies in Virginia, the Carolinas, Montserrat, Antigua, Guyana, and beyond. Between 1629 and 1632,
Irish arrivals in the Caribbean and North America increased, though exact numbers remain unclear. By 1637, an astonishing 69% of Montserrat's population was Irish, a mixture of indentured servants and slaves, all laboring under harsh conditions. Irish slavery reached its peak during the mid-1600s. Between 1641 and 1652, during the Irish Rebellion and subsequent English campaigns, over 550,000 Irish were killed and an estimated 300,000 were sold into slavery. The most notorious figure in this period was Oliver Cromwell. Invading Ireland in 1649, he executed or enslaved thousands of men, women, and children. By 1650, around 29,000 Irish were sent to St. Kitts alone. Over the course of the decade, approximately 100,000 Irish children, often between the ages of 10 and 14, were forcibly taken from their parents and sold as slaves or indentured servants in the West Indies, Virginia, the Carolinas, and New England. In 1652, Cromwell issued orders to send 12,000 Irish to Barbados. Then the infamous To Hell or to Connacht proclamation of 1654 allowed the English to confiscate Irish lands, deport natives to the West Indies, or execute them if they resisted. Over 80,000 more Irish were forcibly relocated to colonies in Barbados and Virginia. By the mid-1650s, specific edicts targeted Irish children for deportation to Jamaica. Records from Whitehall in 1656 describe the need to monitor Irish populations to prevent uprisings, a clear indication that the English treated them as slaves, not voluntary laborers.
Whether or not one disputes the term slavery, the reality is undeniable. Tens of thousands of Irish were forcibly transported, exploited, and sold across the globe. Entire families were torn apart. Children were separated from their parents. Men and women were shipped thousands of miles from their homeland, stripped of freedom and forced into harsh labor under brutal conditions. The exact numbers may never be known, but the scale of suffering and forced displacement is staggering. For decades, these people endured hardship, oppression, and injustice, all for the profit of others. And yet their stories have often been forgotten, left out of mainstream history, overshadowed by other narratives. This history, while painful, is important to remember. It reminds us that oppression has taken many forms, affecting countless lives across centuries and continents. It shows the resilience of the human spirit, even in the face of cruelty and injustice. As we reflect on these stories, we honor the memory of those who suffered and recognize the lessons history has to teach us. Never forget that every story, no matter how hidden or overlooked, matters. Thank you for joining us on this segment of History Did That. Click like, subscribe, and leave your comments and questions below. Stay engaged, stay informed, and remember the stories that history sometimes tries to hide.